In this movie, I will show you how to add grass and textures to the terrain. Now, to do this, go to the texture tool, and this is the one that looks a little bit like a paintbrush. And as you can see, we have the same brushes again in our brush set, but there is no texture currently loaded for the terrain. That is also the reason why the terrain is looking gray and kind of pale and empty. Now, to do this, we can click Edit Texture and then hit Add Texture. Now, this will give us a new window, and we can select the texture from the drop down of the Plot input field. So as you can see, there's already quite a bunch of textures in the scene, and this is not because of our own texture, but this is because of the standard assets that we made when we made a new project. Now in this case, we want to add grass hill to the texture list and just hit Add. Now as you can see, all of a sudden our terrain is already loaded and it is entirely covered with the grass texture. Now this does not allow for much room to paint since there's already grass everywhere, so we need to add another texture so that we can add differences in textures. So let's click Add Texture again, and now from the drop down menu, let's look for something like Good Dirt. Hit the Add button, and now we have dirt as well. Let's go along and add one more, and in this case add the grass and rock. So now we have a dirt texture, a rock texture, and a grass texture. Now for example, if you wanted to add some dirt, basically the only thing that we need to do is paint. And as you can see, slowly you will see some dirt appear in your level. Now this mountain doesn't look cool with dirt, so we can also add some stone here. Let's change the brush size to something a little smaller, and let's add some stone to the base of this. Now you have to be your own artist in this. You can go as funky as you would like yourself. These are basically the textures that come with the island demo, so in case you wanted to look up the island demo again, you totally could and see what they do. In this case, they use dirt for paths and that sort of stuff, and then the rocky texture for mountains and grass and beach, and there's a couple of more textures in there that you can use. But as you can see, this is a very powerful tool. You can even select different brushes to whatever your heart desires for you to paint on terrain. Now next, let's take a look at grass, for example, and this is called foliage, and the Unity terrain also supports trees, but we'll look at that a little later. Now click this little icon here at the end, and as you can see, there's no details defined either, so our brushes are currently empty and won't do anything. If you click Edit Detail, you can say, I want to add a grass texture. Now maybe you're thinking, what's the difference between the other grass texture? Well, as you can see, there's a lot more variables going on here. Let's hit the drop down for the detail texture slot and then click the grass, but not the grass hill because we've already used that one, but the grass one. Okay, and as you can see, the grass is not a full grass texture, but these are actually little pieces of grass. Let's accept the default settings here and click Add, and as you can see, this is a grass texture that we can paint with. Let me zoom into the terrain a little bit closer and then move our camera down just a tad, and now let me change the brush size to a little smaller and the opacity again to something a lot smaller, and the strength also. I like to always start with small values instead of big ones because it's more subtle, and subtleness is eventually the detail you need in your game. Now when I start painting, you can see that I'm adding real grass to the terrain, and as soon as I hit play my game, the grass will be wavy and it will be moving around. Now this is a little much, so in case you wanted to delete some of the grass, again just hit the Shift key and then paint some grass away. Now as you can see, these tools are very aggressive, and it's really a good idea to start with small numbers. Now let's run the game and see what happens. As soon as I walk up this mountain here, and we can actually walk up, you can see that the grass appears as soon as I am in close range, in the proximity, because this saves on the memory space for our character. Let me just hit the jump key here, and as soon as I keep hitting it I can walk up the mountain, and as you can see our grass is extremely wavy. It is moving around and it's a great grass effect. Nobody will know that there's actually a texture, but it's feels and looks like real grass. Now if you wanted to change the waviness of your grass, you can just select your terrain again, then go to the last one where you can change the settings, and you can change the settings here. For example, the bending of the wind, the speed of the wind, and the size of the wind. Usually they're a little bit too high, so you can just change that and make the bending a little smaller. In my games, I like to keep the grass at such a low bending that you can only see it when you're standing still, because if you can see it when you're moving around, it's probably too aggressive. Alright, so much for painting grass and grass textures. Let's look at trees that you can create using the Unity engine.